we are about to delve into a session that possesses a thought-provoking question. Is a constitution a colonial legacy? Get ready for an enlightening discussion that promises to unravel layers of legal and historical perspectives. Today, for the session, we have respected Shlok Chandra ji, an alumnus of National Law University, Bangalore, as an advocate practicing in the Supreme Court and High Court of Delhi. His legal journey is marked by his role as standing counsel of the Income Tax Department and various public sector bodies. His passion for sports and governance shines through, having a working closely experience with Supreme Court Justice L. Nageshwar Rao to implement amendments ensuring 50% women representation in sports administration at the Indian Olympic Association. Along with Chandraji, we have Mr. Surya Prakash. Surya Prakash ji has been serving as the Vice Chancellor of National Law Institute, Bhopal from 1st January 2023. Prior to this, he served as the Vice Chancellor of Damodaram Sanjeevaya National Law University, Visakhapatnam, and as the founder Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra National Law University, Aurangabad, and Professor of Law at NLIU Bhopal. So with a huge big round of applause, I would like to invite both Chandraji and Prakashji to the stage. Together, Mr. Prakash and Mr. Chandra will navigate through the intriguing question of our Constitution's colonial legacy. Get ready for a session filled with insights, legal nuances, and perhaps a few surprises. Also, due to some unforeseen reasons, the author of the book is unable to be here with us, so the people on the dais will continue with the discussion. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you. It's an honor to firstly be here and share the dais with Dr. Surya Prakash, who's a very esteemed member of, Vice Chancellor of NLIU Bhopal, and someone who I've heard of for many years now. And Orgo Sengupta, who's the author of the book, is my batchmate from NLS Bangalore. He's unfortunately not been able to come because of fog in Delhi. He boarded the flight, but the Indigo flight deboarded him and all the other passengers. But that's an act of God, and we must proceed. But what we will do is that we will just capture some initial thoughts on the book, and then I will pick Sir's brain, because we can't waste an opportunity when we have legal luminaries like Sir. And I will ask him, it will be a fire chat where I will ask him about his experiences of running an NLIU, the future of NLIUs, and his close association with Mr. Madhav Menon, whose autobiography he has written. I will also ask him some questions on the recent developments in the country, legal developments. So without much further ado, Sir, your thoughts on the book which Orgo has written. And so if you can just tell us your initial thoughts about the book.
Thank you. It's a privilege this is a strange situation where you have to review or discuss the book in the absence of another. So naturally, book reviews and such discussions will take place in the presence of the other, and where the reviewers, they keep asking questions and reviewing the various thoughts of the other. So we are missing that privilege, so we are not supposed to be critical about the book, where the other is not present. But however, we can introduce the book. So, just I would like to speak a few things about this book, positive things. And whenever we think about the Constitution of India, what strikes to our mind is the first person, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and then the constant assembly. So those who have some touch with law and political science, there was a constant assembly created by the then British government under the Government of India Act 1935. So in order to draft a constitution for the free India, and all great stalwarts in those days, the representation from different states, central provinces, etc., etc., out of 292 members, 210 odd members, they were from the Congress party. And you name any great leader of those times, whether it is Sachidananda Sinha or Jawaharlal Nehru, K.T. Shah, or many other legal, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, many other legal luminaries and freedom fighters, they are part of that constant assembly. And this constant assembly has struggled, debated, discussed each and every article of the constitution. And finally, after 2 years, 11 months, 18 days, the total time took for the Constant Assembly to draft the Constitution of India. And here, when we read about the Constitution, constitutional history, we normally think about what we were taught, that fundamental rights are drawn from America, the preamble was drawn from this place, and the central state relations from that place, directive principles of state policy from Irish constitution, like this. So we have drawn various parts of the constitution from different sources. And here, this is an investigating book. Even every law student, what happened behind the curtains. So the title of the book, The Colonial Constitution, he tried to justify the title of the book by drawing that in the draft constitution, 2/3 of the constitutional provisions, they were taken from the Government of India Act 1935, and it's in fact, a very comprehensive enactment. And by the time when the final constitution was enacted and adopted, 1/3 of the constitution, it was almost photocopy of the 1935 enactment. So basically the author has disagreed in certain areas because we didn't apply our own minds. Because if you take, for example, the Constitution of South Africa, after the apartheid, when the issue of drafting the constitution came before Nelson Mandela, he did two things. The first one is, there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because after independence, after the constitution come into force, there should not be any ill feeling, because there were rival groups, whites and blacks, because of apartheid, number one. Number two, he constituted a committee to look into the tradition, cultural and other heritage aspects. And they didn't borrow anything from other constitutions, in the sense that keeping in view their own culture, their own faith, their own traditions, their own heritage, they prepared the constitution for their own people. So basically that is missing in the Indian constitution. So most of the executive, judiciary, or the union list, the state list, the concurrent list, and the union government dissolving the state assemblies and taking over the powers of the state, or administering the state by the strong central government, that is the unitary model. All these things, they were laid down in the Government of India Act 1935. The other, it took the objection there. Objection in the sense that cannot continue as a judge. The British Judge, Chief Justice rankings, he pleaded, no, this is only tribal. Next day you can give 2 hours. You can hear them after 5 o'clock. He didn't agree and he put his papers. It's a classic illustration of a judge and his integrity. And in recent times, there are like this, there are so many. And one judge whom I like very much from state of MP, Justice J.S. Verma, with whom I have a little bit personal interaction a number of times, because he laid foundation for our university and he used to visit our university whenever we invite him if he finds time. So, on the day of retirement, Justice J.S. Verma, who was there on the bench till 5 o'clock, and he vacated his official residence on the same day. Okay. Somewhere outside the outskirts of Delhi, somewhere in Noida, he purchased some small flat. And after the demanding office, directly, he went to his flat. And some journalist, particularly the reporter of Indian Express, he wants to meet him and he wants to take his interview. When he learned that Honorable Justice already left, he got the address and he went to the place of residence. And Honorable Justice J. Sharma, he already reached there, and along with his wife, maybe some 4th floor or 5th floor, I do not remember which floor correctly. They have started, the lift was not working, so they started climbing the steps. And after 2nd floor or 3rd floor, Mrs. Verma, she could not climb, so she sat. And along with Mrs. Verma, Justice Verma also sat on the steps. That time, the reporter of the Indian Express reached. And next day, there was an editorial in Indian Express. Justice Verma is known for his honesty and integrity. And one such Supreme Court judge who didn't accept any assignment, even if he wants, he can do arbitrations, he can earn crores of rupees. Justice Venkatachalaya and Justice J. Sharma, these are the 2 judges who they served in various capacities, but they didn't take any remuneration, or they didn't take whatever the pension that we are getting, that's enough, and we will serve the nation. So, the question, Indian judiciary is fiercely independent. If they want, they can open the doors in the midnight at 2 o'clock in the small hours, and they can hear, you know which case I am referring. Indian judiciary, there may be 1 or 2 black sheep, but by and large, people of India has a lot of faith in the Indian judiciary, and Indian judiciary is fiercely independent.
And it should be also, considering that there are 34 Supreme Court judges in a population of 140 crores. So, that if you do the math, that is, one Supreme Court judge for about 4 or 5 crore people. So the amount of the responsibility that the Supreme Court has, and it is the court of the last opportunity. That there's no higher court, the apex court of the country, and it's the last resort. Sometimes you don't get relief in the High Court, you don't get relief anywhere else, and you have to knock the doors of the Supreme Court. And it's only fair that the public has absolute faith in in the independence of the judiciary and in the Supreme Court of the country. So, sir, before we open it up for questions, I'm also a great admirer of Mr. Madhav Menon. being a benefactor of what he has created. So before we get into questions, if you can just tell us a little about your association with him, because you've also written his autobiography. So just a little bit about the great man.
Undoubtedly, Professor Nilakantha Ramakrishna Madhav Menon, N.R. Madhav Menon, whom I like very much. There are some people, it's my good fortune that I had personally worked with them. One is Professor N.R. Madhav Menon, and I'm glad that because of my association with NLIU Bhopal, I got the opportunity even to share some time with none other than Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and Honorable Justice J. Swarma, and many legal luminaries like Ram Jetnani, Vahanmati, and so many. So coming back to Madhav Menon, because I worked with Professor Menon at NUJS, and again I'm back to NLIU Bhopal via Maharashtra, and Professor Menon also joined as first director of National Judicial Academy. So our association continued. Because my association with Professor Menon, I used to spend as much time as possible with Professor Menon. Because if you sit with him, any conversation, that itself is a learning process. And I learned a lot, many things with his experience. And one day when I was in conversation with him, because I used to go in the evenings after his day's work, he felt pleasure to spend time with me because he's a fatherly figure. When I heard about certain incidents in his life, I realized that here is a man who has sacrificed his life for the cause of legal education in this country. And I must put in writing these facts so the coming generations, for posterity, the people should know about this man. So, Menon, just I would like to give a couple of instances. If you say Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Professor N.R. Madhav Menon, a great law teacher. When he was 3 years old, his father passed away. His father was working in Trivandrum municipality, and he passed away. And when his father passed away, at that time, his mother, she was pregnant. And Professor Menon has 3 elder sisters. And on compassionate grounds, Menon's mother, she was given a very small employment, maybe something like attender or something like that. And the younger brother, later on, he died due to malnutrition. And those are the days of Second World War. There was a ration on everything, including diesel, sugar. There was a ration on rice also. In South India, people take rice because Menon from Kerala. So his mother, she can't afford even to purchase rice. What she could afford was broken rice, particles. So normally, this broken rice along with some other things, that would be the feed to the buffaloes and cows. So his mother, she could afford to provide only the broken rice, that too not in sufficient quantity. So the elder sisters, in the evening, in the day, when the mother used to give the food, already the younger brother died due to malnutrition. The elder sisters, they used to give a piece of their share of food to their younger brother, at least he should have full meal. That was the state of affairs during his childhood. Till he completed his LLB, till degree he has no shoe, no chappals, no shoes. First time he wore a shoe only after completing his LLB. That's one part of the story. A self-made man. Very strict disciplinarian. And in law, whatever the awards, he got every award. And he has one daughter and one son. When he was Vice Chancellor at NLS Bangalore, the daughter was 14, 15 years, teenage girl. She was affected with hepatitis B and she passed away. And after cremation and everything, then he returned to his office night at 10 o'clock. And next day there was some program. He kept doing work. And I asked him, sir, you should have consulted madam and you should be at your place. He told me, he used to call me Surya. Surya, the pain is unbearable. If I involve in work, at least I could divert myself. So the work culture means he is a hard taskmaster and a little. And when the book was released in Delhi, in the audience, the book was released by the then Law Minister Veerappa Moily was there, Shivraj Patil, that former Home Minister from Maharashtra, he was there. He was there, and in the audience there were some Supreme Court judges and some 20-30 High Court judges were there, including his 3 elder sisters. They were almost 80 or 80 plus. They were sitting in a round table. Because I know the entire history. And Menon, while speaking, his voice was choked, addressing the morsel of food which I received. I hope that I was up to your expectations. So there were tears in his eyes almost, voice choked, and sisters were also wiping out tears. And the person who knew the souls of this side and that side, it was only Surya Prakash. And others in the audience, they were unable to understand why all of a sudden Professor Menon's voice was choked. So, regarding his intellectual capabilities, the work culture, if he has to write a PhD report, 3 hours, right from first page to last page, cover to cover. And once in Prashashan Academy, 10 years back, when he was 10-15 years back, there was a training program for IAS officers. It was the days of WTO. He impeached the developed nations. 1 hour speech, his metallic voice, and a pin drop silence. A fantastic teacher, very good human being, and a great leader.
So we'll open it up for questions. Anything on the book or on any other legal topic? Anyone wants to ask anything? Please go ahead. Yes, please.
So I have 2 quick questions. One is, as you said, that there is definitely judicial independence that is there. There are certain cases where we see judges taking the post of members of the parliament immediately after being one of the cases that happened. That certainly questions the independence in a wider view, in a wider perspective. My second question is, that judiciary is often marred by an uncle judges syndrome. The entry into the judiciary, especially in the high courts and supreme courts, it's usually very family based. And it runs, of course there are cases like Menensar as you told. There are definitely such cases. But overall these are the two questions that does come onto judiciary. So what is your take on that?
So the first one is concerned, when we think about independence of judiciary means, it is not before the person occupying the position of a judge of the High Court or the Supreme Court, or after the superannuation. So in the judicial process, if you find anything, any bias, or the judgment is not satisfactory, that is questionable. In my considered opinion, what he will do after his retirement, we need not bother much. I don't think that it has any effect on his judicial independence. As long as, as a judge, if his integrity is not questionable, then he is independent. Coming to the number two, it is a well-known fact, and it is left to the honorable justices in the collegium. And there is a one survey, only some 120 to 130 families. That uncle syndrome is there, it's a harsh reality. And how to come out, that's the reason why there was a session for Indian Judicial Service. But that has not materialized. So, till some changes are made, that syndrome will be there.
But Justice Call recently said that when appointing a relative of a judge, the collegium must ensure that he's 5 or 10% better than everybody else. Because for the common man, they shouldn't think that, so-and-so has been appointed because he's a relative of a particular judge. So if that person is minimum 5% better, then go ahead and appoint him.
Because it kind of questions the natural justice.
Correct, because
The
it's
person who's hearing is deciding for the person who's to be heard.
Yeah.
I do agree, but that is beyond our hands.
Obviously.
No, it's a known fact,
Yes.
harsh reality.
Yes.
Sir.
My name is Ram. It's a very broadly philosophical question. The fact that the Indian Constitution did not take only from 1935, but even before also.
Yeah.
Nehru report and others know that. It's if it was an airtight thing and it was final, then there would have been no amendments. The fact that there have been so many amendments. So sometimes I feel that I was listening to entire proceedings in Supreme Court recently, and also the judgments also. So we spend a lot of time worrying about what the original thinkers of the Constitution or the original framers of the Constitution meant when they word said temporary. Even on that word there is an interpretation problem, whether it is an absolutely temporary or temporary until another Constitution of the State Assembly will make it final. So it's a broadly philosophical question. Judges do differ from one another in their judgment, even at country level. But once a decision has been given, I think then it's a decency of the things that other judges then should not say that, even judges who have been Supreme Court judges should not speak about a judgment which is given in the current day. And politicians, I'm leaving the politicians out at all. I mean, they will play the game anyway. I'm just talking about the judiciary itself. A brother judge who was retired, should he then criticize the present regime? As I said, it's a broadly philosophical question. That's the best way I could frame it.
Sir, the thought process of each and every individual differs. No two intellectuals will think on the same lines. And judges, they're also products of their time, number one. The environment, the kind of education that they have received. Because, unfortunately, India is the only country, there are so many divisive forces. In India, education also has become a divisive force. See, for example, engineering education or legal education. We have private engineering colleges, standards are different. State engineering colleges, standards are different. And NITs, standards are different. IITs, standards are different. According to the affordability, and some people will go to US and take their engineering degree. Similarly in law, we have private law colleges, we have government law colleges, we have state universities, we have central universities, and we have national law universities. And where law teacher was paid 15,000 rupees per month, UGC has prescribed the scales. Same with engineering colleges, where immediately after the BTech, if there is no employment, he will join as a lecturer, 15,000 rupees, 12,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees. And what kind of standards do we expect? You can't compare an IIT professor with a lecturer in a private law college or a private engineering college. So the standards differ. The amenities, the facilities, the kind of library we have. I don't know that other national universities have such kind of library. In NLI Bhopal, we have one of the best libraries, and I saw in US and UK also, they don't have such a beautiful library. And those who utilize this library, their knowledge will be different. And those who study Allahabad Law Series, 10 questions at a glance, 15 questions at a glance, write 5 questions, nikal diya paper. And who knows who will become the judge of the High Court and Supreme Court. Knowledge differs, judgments differ. For temporary, your interpretation will differ and my interpretation will differ. So for your philosophical question, this is the practical answer. Okay.
Hello sir,
Please.
what is the basic difference between bill passed and amendment?
Difference between amendment and
Bill passed and amendment in the constitution.
bill passed.
Suppose bill passed in the sense that a new law, when a new law has to be made, first of all, the legislative being, they will prepare a bill. They will prepare a note. When that note is placed before the legislative assembly or the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha in the parliament or legislative, that is called bill. When the bill is passed, then will become an act after getting the signature of. And amendment means changing the provisions of the existing act. जो भी संशोधन करते हैं अधिनियम में, that is amendment.
What an intellectually stimulating session we just experienced. Sure sir, it would be the last one because we have to just wind up the session. Please pass the mic there.
I think you can answer that. Sir, one question only. Sir, how far we are lagging in respect to cyber crime, law related to cyber crime?
Sir, we are not lagging behind. And in Bhopal, I'll take only 2 minutes. In Bhopal, in NLIU, we started a course. You might have heard BLLB, BBLLB, BSc LLB. In BSc LLB, we started a course with cyber crimes and cyber forensics. An integrated degree with cyber forensics, cyber law with law. And recently I visited Warwick University, where there was a discussion with their professors, and I explained them what we are offering at NLIU Bhopal. They were all almost shocked and surprised at graduate level, and we are the first law university which is going to have a cyber forensics laboratory. आप बताइए? We are not lagging behind. In one way, we are more advanced. Okay?
It is true that the Constitution of India may have some shadows of the colonialism, but that is because that it grapples with the legacy of British rule. In spite of that, we see that India is the largest democracy, and that is because we have a commendable constitution and a fierce judiciary, as Sir rightly mentioned. Also, the constitution, as I mentioned, is because we have certain provision for the backward society that we have and the women section to uplift them. And that is very rightly mentioned, so we got to know a lot of things because of this session. Thank you so much. Also, the session added to our knowledge that the Constituent Assembly was guided by Mr. B.N. Rao by his choices and by his guidance to the Constituent Assembly members. Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening thoughts on this. As we wind up the session, I request Ms. Shahalini Mahajan ma'am to please come on the stage and present the memento to our esteemed guest. I request everyone to please appreciate them with a big round of applause. The memento is a painting of Ram Singh Urveti ji, a distinguished artist from Pathangarh. It depicts God amidst the sacred landscapes of his village. With vibrant stroke, Ram Singh ji brings to life swaying trees and mythical forms, echoing the melodies of Bandev, the revered musical instrument of the Pradhan gods. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.